Buenas tardes and half a day. Welcome to the Guam Legislature. Committee on Finance and Government Operations is now called to order at 14:02. That's 2 o'clock and 2 minutes. This is April 30, 2025. First notice of this public hearing was disseminated to all senators and media outlets on April 23, 2025, and its second notice disseminated on April 28, 2025. The hearing notices were also made available on the Guam Legislature's website, our legislative calendar, and the Government of Guam's public notice portal. The committee will now hear Bill number 44-38 COR, introduced by Committee on Rules by the request of Magaʹhågan Guåhan, the Governor of Guam, in accordance with the Organic Act of Guam, an act making appropriations for the operations of the executive branch of the Government of Guam for fiscal year ending September 30, 2026, making other appropriations and establishing miscellaneous and administrative provisions. This afternoon, we are hearing the budget for the Guam Department of Education. Joining us for this public hearing is, of course, our Chairman of Education, Senator Guåhan, also Senator Sean Gumatauto, and Senator Chris Barnett. Thank you, Senators, for joining us for this budget hearing with Department of Education this afternoon. Those testifying on the bill number 4438 CR relative to the Guam Department of Education, you've already been seated and at the hearing table, and then I'll be getting my sign-in sheet. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone in attendance of the Legislature in Guam's general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chairperson before speaking and shall state their full name for the record and record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or the nature of the bill that's on the agenda. Personal inferences to the character, motive of any senator or individual testifying are not permitted. The chairperson of the committee may order the removal from the public hearing room of any member of the Legislature in Guam or the public audience who fails to observe proper decorum pursuant to the 38th Guam Legislature Standing Rules. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in immediate removal from this public hearing room. At this time, I'd like to ask the Sergeant-at-Arms to first of all, we'll have our panel rise, and the Sergeant-at-Arms will swear you in for this budget hearing.
Under penalty of perjury, do you all affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mr. Chair, you're under oath. You may proceed.
Thank you, Sarge. And also, I'd like to welcome our Vice Speaker and the Vice Chairman of this committee, Vice Chair and Vice Speaker Tony Ada. Welcome to the hearing this afternoon. So at this time, we'll get started on the presentation from the Guam Department of Education. I understand that we have a PowerPoint presentation, and that will be delivered. Mr. Superintendent, who's going to deliver this PowerPoint presentation?
Good afternoon, Senators. Thank you very much for the invitation and this opportunity. My Deputy for Finance, Mr. Paul, will be presenting the details of the information, but we're all prepared to answer questions for you.
Thank you, Superintendent Swanson. So, Mr. Paul, identify yourself for the record when you begin, and please proceed with your presentation.
Okay, I'm the Deputy Superintendent for Finance and Administrative Services for the Guam Department of Education. My name is Morgan Wade Borja Paul. I go by Wade, and Paul is the last name. Good afternoon, Vice Speaker Ada, Senator Dueñas, Senator Borja, Senator Gumatauto, Senator Barnett. I don't know if we have the slides up yet. Yep, there we go. The first part of we want to address is Bill 4438, sort of give you a one-slide summary of how we feel about those proposals. The items with check marks beside them, we are A-OK with. That's sufficient enough funds to cover our requirements in those areas. The Chamorro Studies and Special Programs Division, our budget request, we're asking for about $110,000 more than what's in the proposed bill. A lot of our costs you're going to see in this briefing are due to increased health insurance, both medical and dental, and also increased retirement fund contributions from the Guam Department of Education. Regarding the maintenance of schools, Yes, exactly. This is what we need in order. I briefed the legislature back in February on our plan to try to put maintainers back down at the schools. I'll let you all know that we had about 41 actual wrench turners, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, and we're trying to beef that up. That comes out to about 1 maintainer per campus, and we're trying to beef that up so we have at least these teams of 10 down at 8 different sites closer to the schools. And to do that, and to provide them with the appropriate materials every year, the pay, of course, and their tools will run us about 8.5, I apologize. Interscholastic sports, in the current fiscal year, we are finding that we will be short approximately for $400,000. So based on that, we're looking at approximately, we're requesting $768,000 approximately to cover that shortfall. This was a shortfall we had last year where we're taking from our general fund pot, and we're experiencing the same difficulties this year, trying to pay for the athletic directors, the coaches, and the associations that referee our interscholastic teams for our kids' after-school sports programs. I don't know if you want to ask questions with each slide or go through the briefing and then ask questions.
Yeah, Mr. Paul, I'd like to complete the briefing and then we'll start the questions.
All right. Next slide, please. So I'm starting this briefing off just to remind everybody that all of our pandemic-related funds are gone. ARP, ESF2, we are not using, we can't use those funds. We're having difficulty drawing what we have left on those funds. And we relied on them heavily since they were introduced in 2021, 22, 23, to pay things like our utility bills. The Guam Cleaning Masters contract was paid by ARP. So many of our contracts were paid using the pandemic federal funds. And that's one reason we need an increase in our requested budget. We'll discuss the increased medical and dental costs briefly, but they are a major component of the increases requested in this budget. Next slide, please. One thing I do want to say that everything in this budget is absolutely necessary. There's no fluff. The Salapit Principat is based upon Guam law. That's how we supply our schools. We're trying to meet the collective bargaining agreement with the Guam Federation of Teachers requirement, and that is 152 positions that we are currently not filling because we don't have the budget for it. So it's sort of our obligation to meet that requirement. And yes, I have talked to the GFT about trying to renegotiate that contract that was signed several years ago. In the slide before you, this is our budget request, $306 million. Breaks down into the amounts $260.4 million in personal cost, $25 million in general operating costs, $17.6 million in utilities cost, and a measly $380,000 in capital outlays, which in my personal opinion is not sufficient to take care of our schools, especially with the larger contracts. As is usually the case, personnel is the largest portion of this budget, 86%. The $25 million in operations represents 8.2% of the request. This covers GDOE's contractual needs, supplies, and equipment. Utilities costs round out the budget at an estimated 17.4%. 5.56 million, covering power, water, and telephone services. That's 5.7% of the requests. And then capital outlays are very minimal, basically covering what's appropriated from the limited gaming fund for sports facilities. That we are only reserving this limited amount for our schools tells us that we need to come before you with another budget request that's separate, that identifies the capital improvement project needs that we have for each of our schools. Next slide, please. Here we have 5-year comparisons showing the relative stability of GDOE's budget request over the years. As mentioned earlier, in prior fiscal years, the budget shortfalls were subsidized by pandemic era and federal grants that covered down on the operational needs of the department that local appropriations were insufficient for. As some of you may be aware, ESF and ARP funds paid for our utilities for several years, as well as funded district-wide supplies and equipment needs. These costs are now moving back into the local budget as they are recurring costs that must be addressed to maintain operations moving forward. GDOE is making every effort to be fiscally conservative, as evidenced by the restrained approach to increasing the GDOE budget request. You can see our budget request has pretty much remained steady over the years. This is the amount that's appropriate to fund GDOE. But costs have been climbing over the years, and those costs, again, are the medical and dental insurance that we pay for our employees, the retirement, even the increments, the required increments, those every year drain our budget. Next slide. Okay, so this is next slide. This is what we actually spent on medical and dental in FY24 and what we're projecting for FY25, just to give you an idea of how those costs have increased. It's roughly $6 million. And based on what we're hearing in public hearings, we foresee that there's going to be further increases in FY26. Next slide. So here we have the breakdown of personnel cost. The top line personnel request is an additional $30.2 million compared to FY25. The breakdown of that difference is at the bottom of the slide. What constitutes the $13 million difference from FY25 is generally comes from the increased healthcare and retirement costs, employee increments, nurses' pay plan, etc. Most vacancies from the 2025 budget requests were cut due to the budget shortfall. We have a significant request for on-call substitutes, the second line. Our rule is generally we budget for 10% of a school's population of teachers. Currently, with the money we have allocated for that, we can hire about 34 substitutes. That they are paid hourly; they're not paid a salary. So the money is only dispersed on an hourly basis. When the teacher shows up to cover a class. But our average absenteeism is about 10% any school day. And to meet that requirement for all the 41 campuses, the true cost is about $7.7 million. Next slide. Okay, I'd like to go back to that last slide, please. Teacher reclassification. Why is that reclassification doubling from previous years? The current year costs exceeded the appropriation level of $850,000 figure. The $850,000 figure more closely aligns with expected costs of teacher reclassification based on the budget meetings with the principals. Why does GDOE need more teacher prep pay when it's already requesting so much more on on-call substitutes? It's a balancing thing. We either pay substitutes or we pay teachers to spend their additional prep time in the classroom, handling a class for an absent instructor. How can GDOE justify millions of dollars in vacancies and new positions? We have slides addressing the breakdown of both vacant positions and the new positions following this slide. Generally, these vacancies are positions that were requested but were not funded in FY25. These positions went unfilled, putting undue hardship on our school system. By not filling vacated positions, GDOE was able to reallocate funds towards other district needs that were cut due to the FY25 shortfall. The new positions that you're going to see in the next slides are 99% requirements set out by the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. Next slide. For the filled positions, our bottom line cost is $219.8 million for 2,286 currently filled positions. School-based, I'm sorry. These are based on the December 31st, 2024 staffing pattern. The school-based positions under this budget, they include all school employees as well as employees hired by the divisions who provide school-based or directly service schools and students. GDOE, on the cafeteria, GDOE does operate 4 cafeterias requiring cafeteria managers and staffing. Next slide. This is our central office filled positions, a total of 159, and the expected cost for those positions is approximately $15 million. Next slide, please. These are current year vacancies. We're continuously trying to hire all school-based vacancies and board-authorized positions, which include facilities and maintenance workers, the comptroller, and procurement staff. Next slide. So these are vacant positions also that we're trying to hire, and we've included in there the 34 additional maintenance workers that brings our maintenance teams up to approximately 2 wrench turners per school. Next slide. Right now, we have procurement staff that are being hired through federal grants. We have 2 procurement people that are paid by consolidated grant in our procurement office. We have In our procurement offices, we just had one individual depart, but he was the buyer for the SPED program. The last item at the bottom are school program consultants. These are people we need to manage textbook coordination and program coordinators and SRO program coordinators. Next slide. These are brand new positions that we are trying to hire. DOE hasn't been able to fill, and most of these are the CBA requirements. You can see at the very top. Those are the collective bargaining agreement requirements, and these are based upon student population. So when the schools submitted their budget to us, we gave them guidance to look at the CBA and indicate their requirements based upon the school populations. And then the budget staff also went in and cross-checked what they submitted with the actual, to verify that it was in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement. And then we have the positions at the bottom. There's 16 that we are trying to fill. Those are non-CBA positions. I'm sorry, a total of 8. And that's for our IT department and budgeting office, business office. Next slide. This portion of the budget is the operational budget, $25 million. Basically, it's all our contract services, supplies that we require to support our schools. Next slide. Utilities. It cost us about $1 million per month, just slightly over $1 million per month for power. Next slide. And then the capital outlay budget. I've been asked before, I know we're up at 2 point for our capital outlay. 2.1. We're up at 2.1 because we haven't spent that money over the years, but if we were to spend out this money at $380,000, for example, in 1 year, we wouldn't get anything. That's just enough to cover, that's not enough to cover the repair of one gym floor. So we need to accumulate this money over years and then spend it on the bigger requirements. And one of the things that the committee and I, the educational, the ESFC and I have been considering with what we've accumulated, the 2.1 million, is to use that towards Southern High School's athletic fields. However, with the requirement to now pay ARP bills up front, that idea is sort of put on hold because we're going to use some of that money to pay ARP bills. And then in the future, we can still use it to do things, big projects, like the Southern High School athletic field. Bottom line, again, is the funds we receive in this arena are just insufficient to take care of the major projects required in all of our schools. So we were asked in a meeting about a month ago at the OFB to come up with a budget proposal of $275 million. And my question is, what do we cut? What of these essentials do we cut? Do we cut out the collective bargaining agreement positions? Do we staff the school with 5% of substitutes rather than 10%? As I said in the beginning, everything in this budget is essential. It's based on, do we cut the principal Salapat Principat by half? And we've approached that, and we want to show this to the legislature, that yes, we have considered cutting our requirement down to $275 million, as OFB asked us to, but it comes with risk. So in the notes on the bottom of this slide, we can cut out all the vacancies and new positions, but then we're risking, again, maintenance. Oh, next slide, I'm sorry. There we go. Thank you. As I said, we can cut out the on-call substitutes and reduce that by half, and that impacts a classroom. Then you have, as when I was teaching down at Southern and instructors were absent, they sent all the kids to the cafeteria and put 2 or 3 school aides in there to manage them, but they weren't getting classroom instruction. I used to have those school aides send the ROTC kids up to me so that we can at least have them sit in an ROTC class rather than joking with their friends down in the cafeteria. But when we're asked to make budget cuts or to bring our budget to a certain number just to meet that number, it is literally putting different areas of GDOE at risk. Next slide. So we did look at, okay, what can we get to besides 275? We could possibly go to 279 million. But again, that puts things at risk. In the filled positions, we would, for example, we're currently funding 227 million. We're asking for 240, so that's where we can make up a shortfall. But then, again, we're not filling the requirements for GDOE. This is just a slide that presents, okay, you want us to go there, but this is what happens if we go to that amount. So we're trying to present you with an honest picture of what we need at GDOE. Next slide. Sort of a wrap-up of consequences of our cuts. The biggest one is we're unable to hire CBA positions. We're already short on utilities. When we submitted our Schedule F back at the beginning of the fiscal year to match it against the appropriations, I had to cut out all of the contracts. And a lot of those contracts, again, some of them were funded by ARP, but no more. We don't have that ability anymore. And then the other thing we had to do is reduce our utilities, but on paper. But the utility costs are real. And right now we're estimating we may have to take out of our general fund $5 million to cover utilities prior to September 30th. Our IT-related contracts are a large portion of our budget request, but that's simply because we have aging IT infrastructure out at the school. Switches need to be replaced, and the switches, I've asked our IT person to be here today. Switches are not cheap. The board asked about, when we submitted our budget request, asked about why are these switches so expensive, and we had to provide the board with an answer for that. but our infrastructure needs to be maintained. We need to maintain our IT, Power School, all the systems we run on IT, Power School, Munis, and network security for the safety of our kids. So these are all contracts that that we rely upon to provide internet service to our schools. So if we're going to cut the budget, it's going to go back to those areas. We're not going to be able to staff the required CBA positions. We're going to find ourselves drawing from the general fund, our general fund, in order to pay utilities and hope we're going to make it through the year. And then we are risking IT-related services to our students. Next slide. We're ready for your questions, Senators.
Mr. Paul. So I noticed you have a couple of backup slides here. I guess that will be part of a discussion after we finish this back and forth. Is this potential savings as well on your backup slides?
Yes, Senator. I tried to foresee what your questions would be, and I thought maybe you would ask about our plan to close schools and what the savings are in those.
Okay.
And so we provided you the cost savings in those backup slides.
And these are not contemplated within the budget, but they are potential savings.
They are potential saving, yes.
Okay.
They are not contemplated in the budget.
Okay. So in addition to what you discussed on what you would need to do, this would be on top of that.
Right. This would help us. I mean, this would help us save some money and reduce our budget requirements.
If this happens. Okay. Before I go to the chairman, I just wanted to outline a couple of things for perspective, Mr. Chairman. So for our listening audience and following along, in general, budgeting practice kind of on a fiscal year basis is kind of a 3-year look, 3-year average. And so just so that we can put it in perspective, in 2024, expenditures and encumbrances, grand total was $248,345,000. Authorized level for fiscal year 2025, which we're currently in, is $266,613,000. And of course, at this time you mentioned, of course, yes, OFB did give you a number to work within. The governor's request for my colleagues, we wrote it in to save paper, but it was just not totaled from the governor's request. So the governor's request is kind of like close to what we asked you to work with as well. The 270, her request is 276,668,647, and that includes the 8.5, of course, for maintenance. So with that, I have a couple of additional questions just to also kind of put things in perspective. Let me go to my notes real quick. First of all, what is the status of your compliance with the audit? And if not having completed the ability to send it forward for the big audit with regard to the OPA, can you give us a status on that?
Sir, we're still working on our audit. There were, in our last meeting last week, there were several items. One is a CEFRA that still need to be completed, and my budgeteer audit qualified a gentleman, Justin Castro, is here. I'm sorry, I should have introduced my team here. Jordan Bukakosa is the budget. He just took on the job about a month ago, to become our chief budget officer. And then Justin Castro has been with me since October last year, transferred over from GWA, and he's one of our general accounting supervisors. But his main focus is now the audit. So there are items that are due. We have another Zoom meeting with OPA this Friday, and Justin can give an update on where we are with completing the requirements that Ernst & Young.
So the clarification is you haven't closed the books.
Say again, sir?
The clarification is you haven't closed the books 2024.
We have not completed the audit, no.
Okay. And this is important because I've been predicating everything that we're doing getting as close as we can as have a picture what the audit is going to look like. As far as I'm concerned, 2023 is dated. It's somewhat useful, but not as useful as, of course, a complete audit would be. I've got a kind of a promise from DOA that in June, they'll at least give us the first quarterly, which kind of is sort of a picture of where things would be, and kind of like a draft. And so that's why I'm asking this, because this is going to be important for when we go and hit the floor. So the books aren't closed. Can we just get an answer on that?
Justin Castro, General Accounting Supervisor for GDOE. Yes, that is correct. We are still making period 13 adjustments to finalize our CEFRAD, which is needed to finalize the financial audit, which would then go to EY for the government-wide closure. Yes.
Okay. And once again, the reason why I asked this question is because I was going through and I was looking at some of the numbers, because we're talking about a number that's being presented as being no fluff, but I just wanted to go through this. GDOE's audit have shown operational surplus in the last 2 years. Can you tell me if you're tracking that surplus this year? And if so, what would that surplus be, even with the funding we gave you last year? That's what the audit shows.
Is he talking about the... For FY24, we did have a surplus lapse, approximately $4 million. But that that money was quickly spent within the next pay period. A lot of it went to payroll, but that's the only lapse I'm aware of.
Okay, so with that, I will now...
Regarding the CEFRA, one of the issues we're trying to resolve is we're showing expenditures greater than revenues on the federal side. And so Justin is working hard to reconcile what that difference is. And one of them is the $51 million request that we submitted to USAID. That was shown as an expenditure, which it truly is not, but we put it in as a journal entry. And that's causing issues right now, so we have to reverse that journal entry.
So if you were to receive that, it would clean it up?
It would clean it up, yes.
Okay. With that, I'm going to go to the chairman. Chairman, Senator Guåhan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not that I don't have any questions, but I've obviously been working with my new best friends over the last couple months in regards to helping them trying to facilitate the ARP dilemma in regards to the refurbishment in the FEMA project or the federal project. So I'll go ahead and defer to my colleagues and continue to work with them and take notes as well, so that those are things that we can also address as I continue to work with them with their finances. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I asked the oversight chair, your chairman, the other day, did you schedule a meeting with GDOE? He says, I'm meeting them twice a day for the last several weeks. So yeah, I think he's kind of familiar with everything that's going on at GDOE. So with that, for our senators, because of this is a budget meeting and a lot of material to go over, I have implemented a 10-minute clock. And when we complete that, I will go back for follow-ups as well. So I just ask you to use your time wisely. But, it is double the 5 minutes we normally do. And then I will allow also for follow-ups. Sometimes other senators ask questions that, answer other people's questions as well. So we'll just do it that way. So in the order of arrival, Senator Guåhan, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to GDOE for being with us today. Let me just go ahead and start. For the record, while the total budget requirement for filled positions at GDOE increased from $140,098,195 in FY25 to $153,231,650, or $13.1 million more in FY26, the total budget requirement for employee benefits decreased from $86,943,856 in FY25 to $84,243,148, or $2,700,000 less in FY26. What information is available on the reason or the reasons for the $2.7 million decrease in employee-provided benefits next fiscal year, recognizing that retirement and health insurance costs continue to increase?
So with the budget call that we got from BBMR, the new positions that we allocated for the benefits were as if the individual was single or had no dependents. So they were budgeted at a lower rate. In actuality, GDOE employees, many of which have families, from there will get skewed. We won't get the true numbers until we actually see the true rate.
We were basing the proposal off of BBMR guidance of how to calculate healthcare costs.
Okay, recognizing that GDOE's FY26 budget request is based on an employer retirement contribution rate of 34.80%, what information is available at this point confirming whether the contribution rate will further increase, and if this were to occur prior to the new fiscal year, how exactly will GDOE absorb the additional cost?
How will we absorb it? How we absorb everything else. We look at our general fund and say, what can we pull out of that, or where can we borrow money from one of the other appropriations to pay a bill that's in excess of what we can. We don't have the current cost or percentage rate for retirees, so we went off of that 34.8%. I don't know if that answers your question, Senator.
No, thank you. Of the 95 vacant positions, plus another 160 new positions that are noted in your budget request, how many of these, I see it twice, but for the record, how many of these are teaching positions, including those positions which the annual budget law authorizes to be filled temporarily with the help of retired GDOE educators?
Yeah, teachers, current vacant positions is 16 per the chart, per the presentation. But yeah, we're not showing in the CBA. We're only showing the school aides, the library techs, the clerks, and the school counselors. We try to fill the teacher positions. There's no stopping on that. So a lot of these vacant positions are purely based upon as far as the 16, are purely based upon teachers leaving and us, rehiring.
Okay. Because as I look at it's a little confusing because you have two sections of showing I have 16 vacancies. So is it 16 or is it 30? Whatever the number is, 32.
Thank you, Senator Gumatauta. My name is Jordan Bukikosa. I'm the new Management Analyst 3 with the Department of Education. So the reason why it's split up between the vacant and the new, this is more based on, of course, GDOE's understanding of what constitutes a true vacancy. We're looking at positions that are under those 95 vacant positions. You see on the slides, we broke it up into those that were from FY25, so these were positions that were authorized by the board. So that's why you see those 34, the 34 facilities and maintenance workers. These were positions that were created within 2025. There was funding available to them. And so that's why they're now listed as vacant moving into FY26. Versus the new positions, these were positions that were they're basically brand new. So of course the CBA requirements have existed since the CBA was signed, but the way that we create them in the system is different from these vacancies. So that's why on the teacher side, that you're seeing the 16 teachers. Those 16 teachers, like the deputy said, they're based off of teachers who were working in 25, but now have since left, whether through resignation, retirement, or transfer, et cetera. And now we're trying to refill those recently vacated positions. Whereas new positions, we wouldn't necessarily see them. This is more something that and I wish that we had a representative from Commander, that's our committee to maximize district resources, because then they would be able to explain a little bit more about how the vacancies are looking in terms of teacher recruitment and maximization, and they would be able to provide that information. So if you would allow us, we would happily gather that information to respond.
Yeah, no problem, Jordan. I think that as long as you get it back to the committee, that it's absolutely critical.
Thank
With
you.
respect to teachers who are absent due to long-term medical illness or military orders, for the record, what information is available regarding the average length of a teacher's temporary absence from the classroom? And aside from the help that's being offered by retired GDOE educators, what steps are being taken by you all, Mr. Superintendent, and the rest of GDOE to minimize the impact these absences may have on student learning?
First of all, Senator, the effort we try to make the deal with the military absence first. We try to work with our folks that are in the Guard, and we have on any given, since I've been here, any given time, we had anywhere from 35 to 50 of our employees activated with the Guard. We've been able to plan in advance for most of them. It's not a surprise, so we can basically handpick a substitute or temporarily hire a retired teacher who's got the background and certification in that area to be able to cover the class. And when in cases of building principals that get deployed, we actually take one of our other administrators and detail them to that, or have them share the responsibilities across schools. We have that in operation right now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. I only have a couple more questions, Mr. Chair. Since my letter of April 4th, 2025, requesting the Office of the Governor of Guam, specifically the Governor of Guam, to deploy financial and grants management personnel from other agencies to provide GDOE with technical assistance, which may be necessary to preserve federal resources for their intended use. For the record, what assistance has been extended by the big executive branch to include the Guam State Clearinghouse, Bureau of Budget and Management Research, and the Department of Administration? Are they coming to help?
At this juncture, we're doing everything in-house. We haven't received any assistance from outside.
Have they extended the offer to you?
Not to me.
They have not. I have not received anything offering assistance. So.
Okay. Thank you for being straight. I think that for all of us as we're watching this, and I think in any hearing over the last 3 or 4 months, other executive branch help could be useful at this time. I only have one more question, Mr. Chair. 5 GCA Section 2101.1F provides that with the exception of the Judiciary of Guam, the Guam Community College, the University of Guam, and the Department of Education, and notwithstanding any other provision of law to the contrary, no application for any federal aid programs, grants, loans, contracts, contributions, advances, direct federal development, or other federal funding shall be submitted or deemed approved on behalf of the government of Guam or any agency, division, office, department, or instrumentality thereof, or any public corporation without the final approval of the director, this being the Lieutenant Governor of Guam, of the Guam State Clearinghouse, recognizing that legislation is under consideration by us here in the 38th Guam Legislature, requiring a thorough review of all applications for federal assistance or participation in federal programs prior to the submission of such applications to the federal government. What discussions, if any, have taken place on the possibility of extending the intergovernmental review to GDOE, recognizing the challenges that your department continues to face in managing these resources and the fact that we have failed to take full advantage of federal resources, a good portion of which could be returned to U.S. DOE.
We have a review process with the board as far as the grants, but if you're asking if we support further review, it would lengthen the time frame to get a grant application into the U.S. Department of Education or whatever takes over the grants when they go away. But I don't see any issue with it. It would just be a timing issue for us to, okay, the application is due on this date, then we need a back plan.
Okay, Mr. Chair, actually I had a half of a question. This is more toward the board chair. In our recent meetings, we discussed whether or not there might be a change in policy relative to some of the double sessions. And there's a current policy that allows, if you're a student that lives within 1 mile of a school, to perhaps walk and use critical bus operations resources to maybe address some of the other parts of your district, especially with double sessions. Is there a consideration to push this out in the next school year that will ensure probably some of our kids are a little healthier when they come back and throughout the academic year, and two, to really protect those critical bus resources at a time when we really, I think we could probably detour it to help support some of the other double session needs in the department.
Angel Sablan, Board Chair of Guam Education Board. Thank you for the question, Senator. Yes, we're looking at this as a holistic approach because some of the options that have already been put on the table by the commander team also depends on bus operations and how far these buses, if we took some kids from GGO and send them to GW or even farther away, where would the buses come from and can they get to school on time after picking them up? So the whole thing about walking to school, unfortunately there's a lot of schools that are not very, especially high schools, that are not very close to residential areas. So most of them, if not all of them, have to be bused or drive their own vehicles, the high school students, or be taken there by parents. But yes, we are looking at that whole approach.
Oh no, and I agree. I think that we have elementary and middle schools where there's busing happening and our roads are much better, that perhaps the idea of walking within 1 mile of a school could be absolutely critical.
And so our team is working with DPW to make sure that all this works for everybody.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time this afternoon. Appreciate it.
Sidus Masi, Senator Gumatauto. Senator Burnett, you're recognized at this time.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the SUP and the management team and Mr. Chair for being here.
Sure.
Wow, what a place we're in, too. As the Guam Department of Education is, in my eyes, reaching a tipping point. As you know, we're facing severe financial, operational, legal challenges that are being addressed, in my opinion, in isolation instead of as a collective and a systemic failure. And I think that's also reflected in the fact that we don't see anything in the budget relative to some of the payments that have to be made to finish construction on the schools. I'm just of the opinion that you should have put it all in here. You know, if we're talking about $25 million to complete FBLG and Agata Johnston, or $17 million to address the schools in the South, which I haven't heard much of in a lot of these discussions that have been happening with the committee. As you know, we're facing lawsuits with the Adequate Education Act. We're facing lawsuits with special education. And the challenges continue. I kind of wanted to first start with Mr. Paul, as I've been receiving a lot of concerns from teachers relative to the Aspire program. For those who don't know what Aspire is, it's an after-school program for instructional remediation and enrichment, and it's designed to provide additional support and enrichment for students in grades K through 8. It offers supplemental classroom instruction and activities beyond the regular school day, focusing on skills taught during the day and providing opportunities for students to engage in activities they wouldn't typically experience during the regular school day. So as you may or may not be aware, I've been in receipt of a lot of concerns and complaints from our hardworking public school teachers about the status of the Aspire payments. And I'd like to first ask why were Aspire program teachers not paid within the required 20-day period after the program's ending? And who is accountable for this failure to meet the basic legal obligation?
Sir, if anybody's accountable, since I'm the DFAS, I'm accountable for it. And it's another system we're trying to fix. The whole process starts in curriculum and instruction. They provide us with the documents. First, they provide us with the plan of what the funding requirement's going to be, and then they provide us actual hours worked for the Aspire and Early Bird teachers. There has been a problem. Of course, as I let you know earlier, Jordan Bukicosa just came on board last month. He's been busy working with the ARP issues and then the budget, budget request briefing. But he's cleared all the documents that we've received from curriculum and instruction. We've certified the funds, and my instructions to payroll today was we need to pay them out tomorrow for the Aspire and Early Bird. But I think we can fix this. It's just one of those areas I've got to go into and look at how the flow is and try to reduce the length of time of that flow. Yes, sir. Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry,
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Paul, just a little bit louder.
Okay. So I said this is a systemic problem that I need to address in the DFAS section, but it also ties in with curriculum and instruction. We're getting the documents in because this is not the first time we're late on getting Aspire payments.
So it kind of sounds like you're saying that curriculum and instruction dropped the ball in submission of the documentation.
I'm not blaming my partner. It's a problem that because sometimes the holdup, in fact, the holdup, I just beat up Jordan like every day this week. My fiance is an Aspire teacher. So I get beat up not just by my boss, but also, and by you, Senator Barnett, but also by my fiance. We will have this, the most recent Aspire payments out by tomorrow.
And is that going to cover the totality of what's due to the Aspire teachers?
We're only behind the current period.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's been, I'm not going to lie to this body, it's been a systemic problem that I need to dig into and figure out how we shorten the timeline of getting the Aspire instructors paid.
Okay, so before I kind of get into what your current budget request entails, I want to kind of go backwards a little bit and ask about some of the appropriations, specifically the $10 million appropriation we're able to give to the department as part of the supplemental budget bill. As you know, the ask was for this, and this was Superintendent Swanson. My original intention was to earmark the whole 10 for maintenance of facilities because we've never set aside funds specifically for the maintenance of the school. So that was my intention, but in talking with Superintendent Swanson, he wanted to half it and put $5 million towards maintenance and then $5 million towards operations. And then so the $5 million was supposed to be used to fund the leveling up of GDOE's maintenance staff, and you had come out with you did a great slide presentation, I believe, at the Southern High Town Hall, and you talked about purchasing equipment, purchasing skilled laborers, so that we don't have to, ask DPW or other entities, even private entities, for assistance, because this is how we kind of used to do it with the Guam Department of Education, where they had their in-house robust maintenance staff. And then come to find out that you have used, I don't know if it's the whole $5 million that was set aside for maintenance, or a chunk of it. But the point I'm trying to make is you didn't use it for what we had given it to you for. So what is the status of that $10 million, and how was it spent?
In regards to maintenance, and I'll ask my Justin to come up with what we encumbered for that $10 million. But we have on the street right now, on our website, the advertisement to hire 8 HVAC people. This is a problem I saw when I came on board. We got 4,000 air conditioners in GDOE, and we don't have one HVAC repair guy. We have electricians that are experienced with working on air conditioners, but we need about, and those team concepts, I put one HVAC person per team. And if that person goes on leave, then another team covers down, et cetera. We have used some of that money also, close to over $1 million for current, excuse me. The intent of that money was to build a warehouse stockpile. Senator Bohr has been in the military, so we call it a prescribed load list, where the maintenance guys get their materials from. But what's happened is we've used that money with various vendors, Benson, Home Depot, et cetera, not Home Depot, Home Center, to purchase materials for current needs. And that's been about $1 million some dollars. We can give you a further breakdown on what we encumbered on the $10 million.
But just for clarity's sake, the plan that you had submitted to the public relative to, we're going to get this many riding mowers, we're going to hire this many plumbers, this many electricians, and it was pretty significant. I mean, you were going to hire, I believe it was like 40, upwards of 40.
It's 34 additional maintainers.
So is that thrown in the trash can now, or is this something that we're thinking about doing with the 8.5?
No, we are going there.
Okay.
Our new deputy is taking over facilities and maintenance, and I'll make sure she and I talk to get that plan moving.
Was any of
because we assured the public that we would have 2 of those teams set up by June.
And that's been part of the system. When we talk about systemic issues, that's been part of it, is that we haven't had that dedicated maintenance.
Right? And this is why I was happy to see the governor's proposal of $8.2 million towards maintenance, because that's about what it's going to cost to maintain our schools every year.
Right, but
that's just general maintenance.
Correct, but it's also discouraging to hear that we went through this last year in the previous budget cycle, where you guys had submitted a request of $303 million. And I remember sitting in this hearing, I was sitting next to the then Appropriations Chair, Senator St. Augustine, and he was like, oh yeah, we're good, 303, we can do it, yeah, no problem, everyone's gonna be happy. In Atlanta, when it came time for the budget to hit the floor, it was 256. You were short at $47 million. We were able to appropriate the extra 10, but you were still short $37 million, and here we are. You guys are coming to us saying that $306 million is not I don't think there's any fluff in there. I think it's just a float, right? And it's going to get you to where you need to go. But now I had heard this morning that OFB and the finance chair had already indicated to you guys that there was no way you would get 306. And and now we know that you've prepared another number, which is $275 million.
We just wanted to show all the senators, okay, this is what we're going to risk. This is if we cut from our true requirements between 303, 306, this is what we're going to risk if we start dwindling down that number.
Yeah, and it's just interesting to me, that narrative, because we had the charter schools in here this morning, and the senators were falling all over themselves talking about, an increase in your budget means you're successful. But you guys come in here and you tell us what you need to make ends meet, and we want to cut you by, a significant 306 down to 275. That's $31 million. I don't see how we move forward.
Point of information, Senator.
Oh, sorry.
Just need to correct you on that. I was very clear when I closed out the budget that we were going to do the best with their additional requests. But it was going to be very difficult, and we made no promises to increase based on the numbers of students that they asked for additional. I was very clear that it's going to be very tight, and we'll do what we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The people of Guam can go back and watch the hearing and decide for yourselves what was said and what people think they said. Can we talk about the status of the $20 million that I believe Senator Dueñas and other senators in the 37th legislature had appropriated to DOE? This was the $20 million that the Adelut bamboozled you guys. They took the $20 million. We went through this whole runaround with trying to get it back to you. Superintendent Swanson, you had basically said that you wanted to leave it with the office of the governor. And then, I've only heard that there was a reimbursement for the National Guard to maybe like $6 million. But what has happened to the balance of that money? And have we ever realized the contracts for the fencing and the mold mitigation that money was supposed to go towards?
Yes, sir. I believe the remainder, 11 million, was for the mold mitigation, and then 3, which are both contracts being worked by GSA. The other one was...
Are you serious? Still, up to now, these contracts are being worked
Yes,
by
sir.
by GSA? That's ridiculous.
The mold mitigation contract, from what I understand, is in protest, and they have not completed. There were hiccups along the way regarding the fencing. I tried to propose that we go ahead and just cancel that mold mitigation contract, and we use some of that money to solve our FBLG problem.
Good idea. What's the status on that? Is that something you've initiated?
The proposal wasn't by all the personnel that I sent that proposal to. It wasn't. I was told it's not going to work.
Yeah, but I'm not sure how much mold is happening in this weather we've been having lately.
Right.
Who
It's
did
just
you
a solution
make
of.
sorry, Mr. Paul. Who did you make the request to, and who told you that it wasn't going to happen?
Not to. Mr. Byrne said, "Look, that's not DOE's money to begin with, so." It was money set aside for FEMA-related projects, and said it wouldn't be addressed. I'm trying to stay out of all the politics of this. I just want to get a job done.
I mean, there's not really anything political going on. We appropriated the money to the Guam Department of Education, and it was subsequently taken and mingled into a fund with other Typhoon Mawar related funding. So I would just ask and I'll follow up as well. Maybe the chair of the Education Committee can kind of track down the balance of this $11 million, you said, and see if we could put it towards...
Well, it's actually 14, because the $3 million was for the fencing.
Even better. Right.
And discussed within GOD management, we think, okay, we can put some of those maintenance guys out, maybe slower, and get some fences up where they were damaged by the typhoon, and then claim FEMA reimbursement on that. But the contracts are taking so long that right now our top priority is FBLG, and that was a source of funds that I was looking at to try to get contracts out for FBLG.
I think of the two, the more pressing need is the fencing, because as I've explained to you a million times before, there are great security risks with our schools' perimeters not being, lined by fences. We've got so many instances of bad actors in the community, and our schools not being protected at that very basic level due to all of this political runaround. It's really just unacceptable. Can I also follow up on the status of Public Law 37-44, and this is a law we passed in the 37th Guam Legislature relative to the performance of a management audit for the Guam Department of Education. And this, I think this is mandated to be completed by June 30. So what's the status on that?
Yeah, the RFP has been put out and approved, and the vendor's been selected. Right now, that is back to procurement for final publication and execution of the purchase order. So it's late getting started. I'm not satisfied with the pace that it's taken to get that through the process, but it is done, it's in place.
And it doesn't seem like that's something that's going to be done by June 30th.
It's not going to be done not now, but certainly by the end of July. We are taking that very seriously.
I attended over the weekend the elementary school volleyball playoffs. Congratulations to the UPI Tuts for winning the championship. But one thing I learned at the tournament was that elementary school sports are not something that we budget for in the Guam Department of Education budget. So what ends up happening, or what has happened over the last about 6 years or so, is we have teachers and staff at the schools who have organized entire leagues with elementary schools playing each other. I believe volleyball, soccer. There's about 4 different sports that these people they're making it happen for our kids, and they're just not getting paid for it. But we budget for middle and high school sports. So the commitment I made when I visited the tournament was to see if we could get a dollar figure from you guys so that we can add this to the budget, or otherwise, encourage you to fund it. So do you have a number?
There's been no discussion of interscholastic sports at the elementary level, and customarily in American education, we do not do that. It's extremely expensive. Remember that you have, for elementary school, you have more than half of our student population is in that. So whatever we're spending on interscholastic sports, which does not show up in the budget in a number of places, will more than double. So if you're prepared to go after that kind of money and appropriate it, we can look into it. But finding the staff, especially when you're looking at the numbers of people that we need to have involved in terms of coaching and all the operational things that go with it.
That's the point,
It's going to be a
Mr.
challenge.
Superintendent, is they've already been doing it. They've been doing it for several years.
And I would submit to you that that's an appropriate community activity that should be going on at that level. That is not something that's part of our charter. If it's going to become that, then this body can change that.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you for the dollar figure, because I think with all the challenges facing our youth from drugs, bullying, vaping, I mean, it's a no-brainer that we should be providing activities for these young kids. I mean, we do it for the middle schoolers, and I think if you had come to that tournament and seen just the excitement with which these kids compete, the enthusiasm that they display, knowing that they have a bunch of grown-ups who go through these efforts to, secure the facility and to staff, coach, and officiate the games. I think you would agree that it's a worthy investment.
There's no disagreement that sports are good activities for young kids. No disagreement whatsoever. I think it's outside of our mission. It's certainly not something we're structured to finance and do. And if we want to make that happen, then we're going to have to reconsider how we're put together a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. And Mr. Chair, I see I've got 10 seconds left, so I'll save my follow-ups for later. Sidos Masi.
Sidos Masi, Senator Burnett. And before I move on, I want to welcome Senator Perez also. As the chair of OFB and Appropriations, and along with our director, I want to make this statement to our panel and to all senators. We remain open to any senator to visit OFB. I will work with them as well as the chair, and to make any changes in the budget where you want to take money and move it anywhere within the budget categories. We have been given a budget ceiling this year by the governor in terms of her appropriation level, and we are tracking right now at about 30% of excess revenues than what we have been tracking in prior fiscal years. We have the hospital which is bursting at the seams right now with expenditures, and we'll probably be asking for additional money this year when they come to see us next Monday. So I remain open for all of these senators. I'll make time, OFB will make time, and you're free to come in and move money, eliminate agencies, do anything you want to do to find the resources to reach these budget levels that are requested for. So I just wanted to put that on the record that we're open to your suggestions. So this time, I'll recognize Senator Jalai.
Sorry, Senator, real quick, could I just make a small comment with regards to the OFB?
Sure.
I did want to apologize. The slides, I was really working on preparing a lot of the slides, and so, the portion where we mentioned that it was at OFB's recommendation and all that, I did want to apologize because it really, I was looking for the right word for it. We had discussed, what would be something closer to what would be an appropriate number. So it was not like at OFB's like, oh, you have to prep this or anything to that effect. So I did want to just apologize for that confusion because I know that, that point was brought up. It wasn't that OFB was telling us, no, your number is this. It was just, look at what your previous years were, look at where, you can move money or try to cut down money. So it wasn't necessarily that OFB was saying you have to meet 275. I did want to apologize for that because I know that was on our slides.
No, you don't need to apologize for that, Mr. Bukosa. I'm just going to be straightforward with you. I mean, that's why we're open. We tell you what we see right now.
Right.
We tell you, that's why I opened with the historical data. You are now tracking, thankfully, basically your last year's budget plus your 10 million supplemental appropriation. Is it going to be enough? Based on your representation, it's going to be really challenging. There's no question about it. That's why I asked you about the audit. Because when we look at the audited financials, even if there was a minuscule surplus, it means that you held the line and you ran the operation as best you could with the money you had. We're graduating that, to the levels that we believe can work with the totality of the budget appropriations. We probably can get a little bit closer here. We'll figure out when the time comes. But no, we openly give you that number to work with because just as much as you want to be real with us in terms of what your request is, we want to be real with you in terms of what we see as a forecast. And that's all we can do. We can forecast this going forward. And anyone, like I said, any one of my colleagues who wants to say, this is the bottom line and that's the number, well, then they have to work with us too. They have to come to us and show us how they're going to help us arrive at that number. Because that's always the wrestle that we have across the hall there. When we get down and get our pencils out and try to figure it out. But I'll just tell you right now, those days of massive excess revenues are just not here. And the other issue I wanted to make sure that you understand, and your chairman has been doing a hell of a job really trying to help you get along with these issues with ARP and outstanding issues nationally. We are prepared and we are preparing an opportunity to discuss what we need to do, what every government does normally, and this government has done with CapEx projects. When you're talking about across the government right now, probably in the area of $120 to $200 million of projects that could fall off based on a full denial from the federal government. That is not going to be an appropriation. That is not going to be a fixed cost in a budget. That is going to be a financing scheme. That is going to take debt service, and if we have to do it, we're ready to do it. We're talking to GITA, we're talking to other officials. We are ready for contingency plans. But I'm glad you didn't put it in your budget because that wouldn't be your budget. Your budget is your fixed costs and your operational costs that you're going to need over the year for to do what you're doing. I've done the same thing with GMH. They have, CapEx projects that they need done. That money was pulled away from them from ARP. Bottom line is probably going to have to put it all in one bucket, and at some point we're going to have to go out on some financing. That's the way capital improvement projects are done. They're not fixed costs in a budget. So I appreciate your submission. Don't have to apologize. We gave you a number because we're trying to be as honest with you as you're being with us. Senator Jalai, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, first time I've heard that we're going to go get a bond for some of these projects. That's a big, huge policy shift. Yep. If GDOE could just tell me, how much was the fencing estimate and how much was the mold mitigation? You said 11 million for the mold mitigation. How much for the fencing? And how much is the FBLG estimate?
To complete the FBLG, I don't have my data in front of me, but it's approximately 15 to 16 million. 6.7 million to get the contract moving again. That's what's remaining on the contract. And then we have 3.5 million for collateral equipment. We have a change order, number 2, which is another 3.5 million. That is not ARP. And so we think we've identified the money for that, or we can pay for it internal with the supplemental that we received this year. And then the...
What do you mean?
The part of the 10 million.
For maintenance?
Well, yes. The 10 million, there was supposed to be 5 for maintenance, 5 for operations. Because we're in this predicament now, I'm looking at using 3.5 to pay, or is it 3.5 or 3.3? 3 million sum to pay for the change order number 2 for FBLG. 3.3, right? Yeah, 3.3 million. And then the one other bill with the FBLG is getting their cafeteria up and running. That's approximately 1 million.
And how, was this supposed to be part of the $51 million worth of projects in the ARP? So you wanting to fund this?
The change order was
not the change order, but...
Yes, the change order, we are expecting to get that reimbursement back and apply it to the change order. The 6.7 million that remains on the contract, that was just going to be normal ARP funding. So, although the change order was going to be paid by, if the reimbursement had come in with the 51 million, then that became local money. And then we were going to use that local money to pay the change order.
All right, so GDOE...
And the collateral equipment.
All right.
And the kitchen.
And these were all going to be covered by ARP originally?
Only the remainder of the contract, 7 million, was on the ARP bill.
All right. So you always had to find this other money, but it's not part of your budget right now?
No.
And the 7 million, you're suggesting that if that could be found, that you need that right now, but it's not part of your budget either.
To get the contract moving again, so that the contractor can get back to work.
Yeah, all right. And what was the estimate for the fencing?
For the fencing, I believe that was 3 million? I believe that was 3 million.
All right. And, okay, you haven't talked about the loss of the ARP money or the potential loss, and what other projects, except for that little bit you talked about FBLG. Mm-hmm. So are we able to proceed with the school year next year without addressing any loss of those ARP monies? For example, the work that's supposed to be done on the other schools, you're not talking about it. If that's not able to be done with ARP, it's not being talked about today on budget day.
We're operating right now with the contractor in place, and we have the ability to, regardless of the outcome, we've got a workaround that we're looking into regardless of the outcome of the ARP situation, to be able to finish the contract. But even at that, if they had to stop and demobilize, we can return all of the facilities. They're already in a safe situation because they've been doing that work all along in the process. So we could, if we had to stop entirely and demobilize, we can make them safe. Now they would be incomplete. We'd have 3 schools that are done, and we would have 3 more that just have the roof all done, but the roof is all done. So I've asked the contractor to, if that's an eventuality, look at where you are in each complex in the stage of your work, and when if you have to stop, you stop at a point that makes sense. Make it safe.
All right, appreciate that. And, but it's not estimated in here, right? How that will affect your budget? Or you're saying you're able to cover that out of operations?
No, none of the, this budget was approved by the board prior to all of the haywire going on with ARP. What we're presenting to you is what the board approved. It's the local budget. So none of the ARP issues are included in this.
All right. Well, that's hard for us because, yeah, I just think it's going to get more difficult, not less difficult, as we go on towards September or towards August when we're going to be doing these in the session. But yeah, you said you might need 5 million more for utilities before September 31 for the current fiscal year, and then you told us how much you need for the next fiscal year. There was a newspaper article that you used some of that maintenance, 10 million, to pay for the utilities.
I know this. When we were first told that ARP is on a reimbursable basis back in March, we did use whatever money we could scrounge up to pay $8 million worth to see how the system's going to work. I.e., we pay the bill, we submit the invoices and all the required documentation to U.S. Department of Education, and then they reimburse us. And I don't think we took out of the maintenance money, but I'll ask my budget.
For utilities? Did you see
for
that article?
utilities.
Wasn't there an article? But there was an article that said that.
So we did take out of the supplemental.
The 10 million, right?
Yeah,
So-
some money to front ARP bills and
ARP bills or utilities?
well, we had put aside some money because our utilities are not fully covered for the year. We used some of the we encumbered some of the supplemental 1.5 million to cover our utility bills. But then we had this additional issue with now ARP funding. So we had to take that money, pay the ARP bills, get the money back, and then we used it to pay utilities.
Okay, so you've paid 1.5 from that maintenance fund for utilities?
We encumbered 1.5,
Yeah.
but March, this most recent bill, it was adding up to just over $1 million. So that came out of that encumbrance. So 1 million now has now become actual.
Okay. All right. So none of the 10 million that was in the supplemental budget has been used for for maintenance teams. Is that correct?
No, ma'am, they have. As I said, we have a
standing
couple of
up
$1 million
to-
we've spent on materials to meet the health inspections to get our schools up and running, and the schools are passing with better grades currently. So we used about $2 million of that for materials. But this isn't the idea that I had that I presented to the legislature of stockpiling a warehouse. So it's time consuming to get the procurement in order and like a blanket purchase order, and then go buy those materials which are immediately brought down to the schools. So yes, we did use some of the supplemental for maintenance, or the 8 HVAC workers that we're trying to hire. That's coming out of the supplemental.
Okay.
And we purchased, through the GSA, we purchased trucks, maintenance trucks for our maintenance teams. Is a dump truck in that one? Yeah, that's encumbered, no. Yeah. We have a dump truck to deal with the annual Baligaskas cleanup, get junk out of our schools. Rather than renting a truck, we identified that it would save us money if we had a GDOE truck to do that. So yes, we did use, it's either spent or encumbered against the supplemental. And thank you, Senator Barnett, for that supplemental.
All right. So out of the 8.5 million that you want for next year's or that the governor's requesting for maintenance of schools, that's less than 10, you're saying you're going to use that this time, as you proposed the last time, for teams of maintenance
Well, it
crews?
will pay the salaries of those teams.
Of the HVACs that you're currently having, that's
80
all?
people is going to run us about $7 million in salaries. So then we have, and we still got to do them.
New people?
80.
80?
80 maintenance workers.
Yeah, when are you getting those? Because you said you only got 8 HVAC.
Yeah, the requirement to beef up our maintenance was from 46, I believe I briefed, to 34 more. But right now what we have, because it's our urgent need, is to take care of the air conditioners, 8 HVAC people on our website.
Okay, so the 8.5 will cover 34 more for sure.
Yeah, annual salary.
Salary, all right.
And then the additional money we can use for materials.
Okay, all right. My other question is, somebody said that we couldn't renegotiate the contract, or it hasn't been renegotiated, the bargaining agreement. Could you just tell us why, or what's the status of that, and when is the next time it's supposed to be renegotiated?
It has another 18 months on the contract, but we can reopen any part of it. And I've been talking to our union leadership about that eventuality, but getting it in negotiations right now is a little bit more than we need to have on our table.
Okay. And you're saying that this current budget proposal will cover 34, well, it covered, well, you have 34 substitutes that you cover with the current budget, but you need, I think the number was really high, according to the CBA, you needed 156 substitute positions?
So, Senator, the CBA is not touching the substitutes. That's more of a set aside for as part of our personnel request. So the request that we put in, that $7 million figure, that would cover 156 substitutes, which we based off of 10% of the teacher population at each school. The difference, of course, is we're comparing current year costs to previous year costs. So it doesn't currently fund 34. I'd have to look at the actual hiring and speak with Dr. Adamas, since she would have a more accurate tracking of how many we totally have. But the current year 1.7 million, I believe, that was appropriated based on the spend plan we made. It's much less, of course, given the complete difference of the numbers.
Okay, and then. The IT contracts, if you cut these, that's one of your proposals, or you're saying that's one of the consequences of kind of a status quo budget. None of these were able to be covered by any of the IT expansions that the government of Guam and the governor's office have been part of?
Yeah, actually, I just found out about that governor's office and intend to try to meet with them either this week or next week for those grants.
Yeah.
But we do internally deal with the E-rate grant, and when we have an expense that's IT related, we try to charge it to the E-rate. But that's one of those contracts where you got to pay, one of those grants that you got to pay up front, and then we get a certain amount reimbursed.
Mm-hmm. All right, yeah, because I'm shocked if they're rolling out this entire program, for example, for the South right now, and DOE is not included. It doesn't make sense to me. But the other thing was, you were talking about using some money for Southern High facilities, or you're saying that the amount that you get from that search and fund, the limited gaming fund, is not enough. But
Yeah,
I just heard the Lieutenant Governor talking about they have a grant that's taking care. Apparently, there's an MOA between you and Southern High, and that they're going to be taking care of the facilities. Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of that.
I'll respond to that,
hello?
Senator.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Sablan.
The grant that the Lieutenant Governor was talking about is actually Department of Interior Compact Impact money that he's looking at to assist GDOE, what we need from GDOE, and we are actively working on that agreement. It's going to be a joint use agreement between Southern High and DPR, where we will go ahead and take over the maintenance and upgrade the facilities at Southern High. Priority of the use would be Southern High School students, and then after that, the community can be allowed to use it. But for us, it's a win-win situation because we know GDOE does not have the funds. It's going to cost millions of dollars just to get the Southern High facilities back into operation. We're talking about track and field, baseball, volleyball. The swimming pool actually is going to be out of the question because that itself is going to cost around $6 million just to repair and renovate. But the rest of the recreational facilities, that is what we're working on now. The agreement between Department of Defense and GDOE for the use of that property as Southern Heights actually expired in 2021. So we're now allowed to be able to make use of the entire facility without worrying whether or not DOD is going to come back and say, give me back the property. It's over, it's expired and it's over, and we're now able to use it. So that's where we're at with that situation.
All right, well, so it sounds to me like somebody, maybe DPR, solicited DOI, this be the project that DOI is going to fund and that they're going to enter into an MOA with DOE, but I'm not sure that was DOE's priority. Like, why didn't we partner with DOI for FBLG and get that done, or something that's very critical to opening these schools back up? But I mean, I have no objection to fixing those facilities and sharing the use, the idea, the concept, fine. But it's weird to me that DOE doesn't have an MOA right now, and that we've already solicited funds in some other end of our government for use of those facilities, and that this is the priority that we've represented it to DOI as opposed to schools, right? Or the whatever we're not able to do with ARP, even when we had ARP guaranteed. So I don't know. Mr. Swanson, are you familiar with that agreement?
Familiar, not with DOA, and I heard about it on the news.
Okay.
And it's like there hasn't been any conversation with us, but the effort, you have to understand that I have a number of campuses that need a significant amount of investment. The Southern High School athletic facilities are basically non-existent. We're about to get the gym back online, but all the outdoor facilities are in really rough shape.
I know they need it, and so we need it, but it's a policy decision, I guess. Is that something that the board decided, Mr. Sablan?
No, it was something that the Office of the Lieutenant Governor offered.
Yeah, just the Lieutenant Governor and DPR?
Yeah, it's not even signed by DPR yet. It's just being worked on by the Guam Clearinghouse.
Yeah. I guess, in furtherance of what one of my colleagues was talking about, this, we could be helping DOE much more with a more unified approach, whether they want to charge you or they don't. Still, there's so many things going on in the government that I think if DOE was the priority, for example, we funded a school, one of the charter schools, out of CDBG funds. If they can't use that for DOE, I mean, I would like to know why. Are you pursuing CDBG grants for GDOE facilities as well? Or infrastructure, converting to solar, anything?
We've been working with Guam Power through Siemens to do quite a bit of that work. Unfortunately, the engineering project that was put together to bring that to fruition was funded through ARP, and so that was the Siemens folks suspended work on that because of the pause in the funding. If we're able to get that back, we can pick it back up and finish it, because that's also in that work is an ADA analysis for the whole school system that the legislature has required for us to submit. That research has been, it's about 80% complete. I just can't get the report yet because we have to get that $4 million check to Guam Power for that research. But we are partnering with other agencies as we can.
All right, and then 2 more questions, hopefully. For the teachers, so it says 16 teacher vacancies we're trying to fund, and that's going to bring you up to what you need? Is that great news, that there are only 16 teacher vacancies?
Those are, actually, those are vacancies that we are funding. We're already funding because teachers are the priority.
They were covered in FY25.
Right.
You want to cover them again in FY26?
Right.
Okay. Are there other teacher vacancies that you are not funding or not proposing to fund?
No. Other than in the CMDR process, we are saying, okay, where can we take these teachers for the schools that we plan to decommission and move them to fill vacancies in other schools. So those are mostly elementary schools. And
sorry, may I just also add on? It's again the 16, like the deputy said, and like you're seeing, those are the vacancies that we of course are refilling. But then any additional vacancies that do exist, it's not necessarily a matter of hiring more teachers at that point, thanks to the efforts of that commander team. It's a matter of, okay, how do we look at reallocating teachers across the department? So similar to like the closure of certain schools, those teachers now will be smoothed out across the district in a way that's more efficient on our resources.
All right, so does this budget encompass your realignment of schools?
no, as I said earlier, this budget was approved prior to the approval of the 2 schools that were considered for closure.
All right, I see you have some supplemental pages in the back.
Yeah.
Closing the 2 schools will reduce your cost estimates and allow you to use that under operations, is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
And these amounts, looks like cost savings in closing 1 school, Chief Brody, is 1.9. And closing LBJ, 2.2 million. That's it?
Yes.
It seems so small versus, closing a school.
That's correct, Senator. The major savings, of course, is not coming from personnel, which is the major cost when it comes to our schools. So because we're not going to be, decreasing we're doing a workforce reduction, those people are still going to stay on payroll. It would just be really the savings from different contracts, utilities, et cetera.
Now, we still need to move forward with the idea of leasing those facilities, and that would add revenue coming in to help us with our expenses.
But that's not part of your budget proposal, right? That you're counting on revenue from closed schools?
We're counting. The budget submitted does not considering
I hope that's
the
not part
closures.
of it. That just seems very. That's a whole other policy decision. I think I've seen a bill for that, but I've also seen proposals for other things for the community needs. All right. Okay, I'll stop there, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity if there's additional time in the end.
Sure. Thank you, Senator Tulahi. At this time, we'll recognize Senator Montanani.
I'm not sure if I have any questions because I'm just still kind of in shock with some of the things I've heard today and some of the numbers that I've seen and have not seen. And I tend to agree with some of my colleagues who are wanting to see more details. And I understand that this budget is supposed to be about fixed costs, fixed assets, but at the same time, education it impacts all of us, right, with children. And I was hoping to see more about the CIPs, whether it was separate, how much it's going to cost for Simon Sanchez High School. I know the RFP is still out there, but some kind of an estimate. To hear about mold mitigation, the fencing, it's still out there in limbo. It's just frustrating. And on top of that, to hear about this MOU, MOA with DOI and GDOE and GDOE, you guys are sitting in front of us and you're like, we don't know anything about it. It's just ridiculous. So I just feel like there just needs to be more communication, more transparency, whether it's bringing the governor's office down here, the lieutenant governor's office down here, everybody down here, just to get some straight answers. And our children, our parents, you guys, we all deserve to know what is going on. When you guys were here during the oversight hearing, it was the first time I heard $188 million in potential loss in ARPA funds. Prior to that, it was, the 26 here, 54 million here, but at the end on the slide, it was almost $200 million. When you were here again last time, I asked you, are you guys in a state of emergency? Everybody stood up. Then there was a press conference that was held last week by GDOE. I don't know if it was Wednesday or Thursday, and there was this discussion about passing a resolution, I believe, to declare a state of emergency. I mean, how much longer are we going to wait? Is it a state of emergency or is it not? And that's all I really have to say, but I just was expecting a whole lot more. Thank you.
If I may respond, Senator?
Sure.
I've been in this job since July, and I was sort of shocked to find out that we don't include capital improvement projects in our budget requests. When I spoke with individuals on our board about why we don't do that, I was instructed, no, this is purely operational, and we have to submit it. And that's why I mentioned in the beginning of this, we owe the legislature a rundown of what all our major projects that need to be addressed in the schools, capital improvement projects. And I was instructed that we should submit that as a separate budget request. So.
Right, but with the Guam Memorial Hospital, we had our meetings with OFB, and they gave us, what their operational budget was. But on the side, gave us, we need $22 million in CIPs. So, again, I was just hoping to see more.
Senator Mantanani, and I don't disagree with that. I think the thing is that when you put your CapEx together, what you're looking for is debt service. Because you're not going to put in your budget that you need $200 million. You know that's not going to happen. There's no $200 million sitting around anywhere. So I agree. And for the finance team, maybe this will be something new. Put together your CapEx, go to GITA, work with them in terms of what the current market conditions are, work with, what that would look like, and then basically say in a scenario whereby we were able to carry out these CapEx requirements that are anticipated, this would be the debt service. Because that's what you would be adding to your budget. There's no pot of cash that is going to pay out your capital improvements. It's going to be a financing scheme. So that's the point. I mean, I think you should go through the exercise. But if you're going to go through the exercise, go through it fully to the point where you actually have a real number and a hard number in terms of if we were to be able to go to market within this fiscal year, this would be the debt service we'd be requesting.
Yes, sir. We did have a meeting with GITA, Mr. Fernandez Estevez, and he's, with Guåhan. He has a grant that he told us is possibly available to help us, and we're in further communication with them on that, or we're going to have further communication. And we'll lay that out to him. Here's what we need to cover our facilities requirements outside of what's ARP is already contracted for.
And I appreciate that because also what comes with CapEx is alternate funding sources, meaning you're reaching out, you're doing everything. That's what we asked GMH to do. It's like, man, it seems like with this big $508 million that's coming out, and it's MOAR related, and it's pre-MOAR and post-MOAR, I can't see anything bigger than our schools and our hospital in terms of taking the biggest hits and being related to being shelters, the gyms and the villages being tier 2 shelters. I mean, all these things seem on the table to me, but we continue to work with that as well. But so that's the contemplation. What alternate funding sources are we working on? what is our overall CapEx that we've identified, and then if we, in a real world scenario, in today's money, what would that mean for debt service? I think that would be a great submission. Thank you. Mr. Vice Speaker? He's Vice Chairman of this committee as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps just a couple of comments and questions. On your budget comparison, what is your contractual entail? Contractual number item 11, what does it entail?
Vice Speaker, you're looking at the budget, the schedules?
17,754,000, what does that entail? This page.
Line item 11.
He's got the breakdown here, sir.
17. Apologies, Vice Speaker. Which 17 million are you referring to? I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it here on our copy here.
That's what you guys have, contractual, your proposed
Contractual.
budget is 17,764,272.
Okay.
It's the last page of this document that, yeah.
All right, thank you, Vice Speaker. So based on what we're tracking, it's looking 18,014,271.90. That's for the contractual. It's under operations. These items, they encompass everything from the different special funds that go into interscholastic sports, the child nutrition program, the funding for the reimbursement fund, and their commodities. It encompasses the grounds maintenance contracts, all the fire suppression contracts, the custodial contracts. It also then moves on to different IT contracts, which is what we were referring to at that last slide. It includes the cost to run our cafeterias. It includes the cost for different administrative contracts as well, including the audit fees, membership with NASB, let's see, our inventory tracking system. Sorry, there's a good number of, I'm sure you see the list.
The miscellaneous were $2 million. What does that cover?
Right, so this is unallocable federal payroll costs. Did you want to explain it? All right, so this item, we're requesting for $2 million due to some issues we are seeing with grant employee payroll. What we're experiencing is whenever grant employees are tasked to do non-grant activities, of course, they must submit a time, what is it called? Time distribution report. So a TDR. And so what's happening in our experience is that once these TDRs are submitted to the IAO, our internal audit office, they're getting flagged due to whether it's some kind of error with the input, whoever the employee was who prepared it, or with their supervisor not getting on to them and saying, hey, make sure it's distributed properly. So IAO is flagging it, saying these costs are not allocable to the grant, and so they're not requesting the drawdown for that part of their payroll. This is leading to, of course, because we are doing it on a reimbursement basis, we pay out the federal payroll first and request for the reimbursement. We're not getting back the full reimbursement. And so this fund is really set aside to just make sure that the general fund is not fully subsidizing it without getting coverage back.
I'd like to clarify that, Senators. This isn't a matter of documentation. This is a matter of us using personnel like school aides or one-to-ones maybe that are funded with federal dollars, and then they're redirected to do local work. And so we cannot, they each have to turn in a time distribution report whenever they're tasked, and that's why some of the shortages we have on the local side, particularly school aides, we need that funding, because otherwise we're taking the federal employee and saying, go do this local task, maybe watch the gate entering into the school. So he spends an hour or 2 hours doing that. That is not paid for by the grant. And that's what our IO catches in those TDR reports. So that's the $2 million we're asking for that to cover local expenses that are paying for the subsidies of these federal employees, paying for the federal employees doing local work.
Okay, thank you. And then also, I don't see anywhere here vendor payables.
Vendor payroll, sir?
Yeah, no, payables. You guys have no vendors that are owed any money?
Those are all that's all addressed in the contracts.
In the contracts?
For FY26.
Okay,
yeah.
so under contracts, under the vendor payables, how much is, out of the 17 million, how much is that is going to vendors?
Vice Speaker, are you referring to like the federal bills that are on like an aging report that we usually discuss?
No, I'm talking about vendors that
from previous
DOE
years
owes to these companies. How much is, out of the 17 million on contractual, how much is going to vendors?
Sir, these are, majority of those contracts are contracts with vendors. But these are for the FY26. Now, we do have bills from FY25 that go to vendors. But those are a lot of, 94 of them, 94 vendors are in the ARP situation. We have some from CG22 that we're trying to pay, Consolidated Grant 22. A majority of the vendors on our aging report on the federal side are ARP and CG, Consolidated Grant.
Okay, how about vendors that are not on ARP?
The local ones, we're pretty much caught up with paying those.
And how many days behind are we on local vendors?
We're on if you see our aging report, I just briefed the board's finance committee last Friday. We're actually caught up, we're current on local vendors. But our issue is with the federal vendors. And part of that is the public law for the budget says we cannot pay federal bills only if they are on a reimbursable basis. And Consolidated Grant is still submit the invoice, receive the draw. But ARP, I like to say that's sort of a blessing in disguise because we can slowly pay some of those ARP bills that we currently owe because it's now become a reimbursable, on a reimbursable basis.
Okay, so on the contractual or even on the maintenance, we talked about this, I think, on the oversight where the schools that are still being maintained by on the leaseback. Have we got any update on that and how much are we owed, or are we still paying them for work that they're not accomplishing or finishing off? What are we doing?
I have an email from Mr. Byrne, and I owe him a reply that, this is the last year of that. We get those schools back, but he asked me to let him know if he should stop payment this year.
And your response to him?
My response is going to be yes.
All right. So then we don't pay them for whatever remaining of the term.
Until we settle them accomplishing the requirements of the contract.
Does this budget reflect the five schools that will be returning back to GDOE inventory? And is there anything in here that includes for their maintenance or anything like that?
Yes, sir. This budget reflects the teams that we want to put out there. It reflects the cost of those teams so that we assume the maintenance of the 4 GEF schools.
Yeah, but we've been assuming the maintenance, right? For how long?
We've been absorbing some of the maintenance. Our F&M teams go out and prepare Okadu, Guåhan, regardless, because the mission needs to occur to have those schools pass the inspection.
What was the annual do you pay them annually or monthly on the maintenance for the schools?
Senator, none of that money, that's a direct payment from DOA to the GEF contract. So none of it comes through GDOE. But I believe it's 1 point some million for the maintenance.
For the 5 schools? Or the 4
For the
schools?
4 schools, yes.
1 point what?
1 point, you know?
We can pull up the law.
Yeah, I believe it's 1.4, 1.6 million. I know it's in the it's in the 1 point something.
So did you
range.
tell Director Byrne just to take that 1.6 million, not pay it to the contractor and just give it to DOE because they could utilize that 1.6 million and go backwards another maybe?
We'd love to, Senator, but I believe, you know, there's legalities and we've got to settle the disagreement between us and the contractor.
Okay. Well, and in the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Relief, have you guys put a letter together to submit to GURA so that you guys can justify for, you know, monies that you may need to repair the schools from the Typhoon Mawar
We are
disaster?
preparing that letter. We had a meeting last week with the Vice Chair, Dr. Swanson, and I. We sat down with GURA, and he told us what the requirements are.
And when will you guys be submitting that letter?
I want to get it done after I'm busy briefing the legislature.
Okay, because the comment period opens tomorrow, right? You know
Right.
that, right?
Right.
So I would ask the chair, Senator Guåhan, to be sure if you can transmit a copy of that to the committee so that the committee can review that letter as well.
Okay.
In seeing what you're asking for and how much you're asking for from the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Relief Funds. On your FBLG issue, yeah, you mentioned change order 1 and change order 2. What was change order 1?
I don't have all the details in front of me. It's more of our capital improvements guy who's not here, Nick Cruz.
So
I can't answer that, sir.
Yeah,
but
you
we
know,
can.
I hope that perhaps next time when we come before the committee, especially for the budget, that we have those that are involved in answering questions that the committee asks, that, you know, we have them here, especially
Yes,
like
sir.
with vacancies as well, you know, and the 3.5 million for collateral equipment that you mentioned, I think we had that discussion as well before, and now it's, what are we looking at, the 1 million for cafeteria? Is it going to be 1 million now for cafeteria collateral equipment? Or?
Yes, Senator. We set aside encumbered 1 million. That's what's on the. It's actually a little less than that, 800,000. Okay. That's what's on the bid, and I probably shouldn't be public.
So then the overall for FBLG would be less than 16 million, right?
Say that again, sir.
The overall cost now, looking for FBLG, would be less than 16 million?
Right. I think we briefed last time. It's 2 million less than what we briefed
2 million less.
last
So
time.
now we're looking at 14 million. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's the only questions that I have, and I thank the panel for being here today. Thank you very much.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Vice Speaker. Senator Talatadegui, you're recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and my colleagues. Okay, so it's time to buckle down, figure out how we're going to make this work. And first, we've got to make sure where there's liabilities that it's not going to put us in an even deeper hole and get sued. That's my concern. We're talking about contracts that you put a 45-day stop on payment in that event. 45 days? Is there something in the contract that allows you to do that with these vendors?
All of our contracts, including the ARP ones, have a clause in it that says pending availability of funds.
Okay, so we're safe there.
Right.
Okay. So when you talk about also cuts, I'm looking over here where it says that on, you don't have a page number, but it's under the same line as 279 million feasibility, that section of your printout. And it says here it's just salaries, benefits, and buildings totaling 268.7 million. It says, and this does not account for other basic needs and required spending, and parentheses, direct student services and SPED. Isn't there something by law that we are required to do this?
That's correct, Senator. So that's why I just put that caveat of this is just really for the salaries, benefits, and the buildings. So we're not yet discussing the fact that there are maybe federal matches that are required to maintain the grants, or there might be other spending like a portion where GDOE is required to pay for, I believe it's called Section 504, things like that of that nature, where this is not even yet the floor. This is just saying if we wanted to forego everything else and just pay for the people who are workers, our employees, plus what it costs to do the maintenance on the building, that is 268.7. So if we, of course, wanted to do an absolute floor, I would have to go back and then just make sure, okay, each of these contractual items, are they mandated by law?
Right.
And then I would be able to prepare that information.
So that brings me to my next question. It said that the board had approved this budget that we have in front of us. Well, where's your revised budget? It's this printout here?
So thank you, Senator. That's why we mentioned it's really just something that we exercised into to create a potential, like a proposal of what it could end up being like if we had to reduce down. So
Okay,
similar to
well,
how we, oh, sorry, go ahead, Senator.
No, I think where we should have started was a revised budget. A budget where you come in front of us and tell us that this is exactly what's going on, because we have a budget that was approved by the board back in January, and today's climate is totally different. We don't want to, especially SPED, we know that a lot of money stopped in that area, and we have to subsidize these children, those most vulnerable. That's very important. So, Mr. Chair, DOE is the biggest, budget that we have to put out, and the most important one. So I think a revised budget to be provided to this body is called for, something that, in putting into account everything that you have under your belt, because, going back and listening to all my colleagues talk, it just jumps from one area to another and it confuses us. We're talking about a $7 million, we're talking about mold mitigation, we're talking about all these things that's not really, categorized and helps us to understand really where you really need the help. I mean, it's money, that's one thing, but, even when we gave you the money, this is very disturbing. Even when we gave you the money, we saw the audit report. The OPA released DOE's FY23 financial audit in November 24. The audit highlighted significant issues in financial management and compliance. DOE returned over $26 million in unused federal grant funds. This was FY23, gentlemen. You can imagine what that OPA report will be in 24. So this is 23, including challenges in fund utilization and program execution. Nothing in here is giving us comfort, knowing that you've addressed some of the concerns, a corrective action plan. That's one of the biggest things. We throw money at departments of and agencies just for it to be wasted, because nobody decides to put a plan together, a corrective plan on past problems and issues. And one of them for DOE is finances. I didn't hear one thing in your presentation today to talk to us about how you're going to overcome these obstacles, especially in the OPA report in FY23. So other than that, I just think that we should come back. DOE should provide a revised budget down to the nitty-gritty on what really needs to be spent, areas that needs to be covered. And my concern too also is, when it comes to the, okay, let me ask you this question. I'm sorry, see, here I'm jumping. The Aspire is funded by US DOE, that's right, the grant for the, and yes. My concern is this program in danger?
No.
Okay, that's good to know.
Consolidated grant is what funds Aspire, And no,
Okay.
it is not in danger.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to know. And see, I'd like
At
to
least
know
we have
the.
not received word from USAID.
Okay. See, and that's another thing that we need to know, which one is in jeopardy here. You know, where everyone is kind of confused. We're just going from right to left and up and down and no real direction. So other than that, I mean, I'm sure my colleagues have some more questions the next time around, but it just gets down to a big, goulash of no direction. So if you can provide us a revised budget to assist us in seeing exactly what you're seeing, that'd be very helpful. But other than that, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chief Masi. Senator Paris, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I agree with my colleague. When I'm looking at this budget and looking at what was submitted, there's some discrepancies that I see. So who certified this budget to be accurate?
You're talking about the $306 million?
Yes.
As the DFAS, I presented it to my boss, and we presented it to the board, and the board approved it.
Okay. Just like my colleague said, I think things have changed. And can somebody clarify? Because when I'm looking at the budget that was submitted and approved, there's an operations fund. What exactly is that?
That's our general operations fund that covers like the contracts and everything listed on that slide.
So it's from general fund money?
It's. Go ahead.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. So listed in that 25 million, some of those line items, they have the actual fund it comes out of. So some of them are notated that it's Healthy Futures Fund. Some of them are notated that it's Guam Educational
I'm talking
Facilities
about the
Fund.
original submission. We're looking at the source documents. It says Operations Fund. I'm not, yeah, so what was meant by that?
We have we break up our immune system into various accounts. And one of them is our operations fund, i.e. there's payroll, there's operations, and then they're subdivided into further different accounts. So the operations fund covers the things that we have listed in this budget request.
So you didn't further delineate what the source of funding was when you put together this budget?
You mean
So if you
source
look
of
at the
funding
source-
as being
Sorry?
federal or local?
So if you look at your source document, for instance, if I look at the FSAS, if I look at the different divisions, it says Operations Fund.
Mm-hmm.
So am I to believe that's general fund, or is it a different fund? What's the source of money for that?
That's our general fund.
It's general fund, okay. So I want to ask too, regarding your federal classified funding source, and it states here 63 million for FY26. What positions encompass that or included in that? I don't see a clear picture in the submission that you provided.
Is this the personnel?
Yes, so in this particular handout that we receive, I'm sure you have a copy as well. On the footnotes, it states classified federal and unclassified federal, and then it goes on to total federal FTEs and classified indirect costs. So I am interested in seeing how that is broken down.
Thank you, Senator. So, of course, what you're now I see we're looking at the same papers now. So the item there that you're looking at is the footnote section, correct? That section is just detailing that these federal employees, of course, they're not part of the local budget, right? So they're not part of this 306. They're paid separately out of their own individual grants. They cover a huge variety of positions. We could go back and prepare that based on our staffing pattern. It provides what positions are funded federally versus locally. So we would be able to provide that breakdown. It, of course, goes from,
Yeah,
you know,
I appreciate that because
yes.
it wasn't clear in your original submission. What is general fund? What is federal funding? Because this is a really important issue when we're talking about federal funds potentially being withheld. And so this is a potential liability of our local government to fund. I mean, we just heard about Head Start. We heard about other potential programs that are really critical to Guam, and how are we going to fund this? And so I would like to see that in a revised budget. Also, I think last night, or at the town hall was mentioned that there was going to be some decisions or recommendations made to the board regarding, you know, consolidation of schools. And I think perhaps this budget hearing is a little premature because we really need to see what decision the board makes so we can have a budget that we can be confident in. So that's one of my concerns about this budget. And then also the concern that I have is, what is the status of you know, sanitary permits? I don't think this budget necessarily covers that. So we would like to see a more definitive presentation about the GDOE budget when it comes to sanitary permits. The other thing I'm seeing is a discrepancy in the Salapi Principat amount. So what I see in the original submission was much greater than what you have in this presentation today. And so that's why I ask, who checked this budget? Is it reconciled properly? So I don't have much confidence in the presentation today. And I would like to also reiterate the sentiments of my colleague here that, you know, I think it's necessary that maybe we need to come back and see your revised budget.
We can do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, the concerns, of
I'd like to
course-
say that, you know, in the document you were looking at about federal employees, it's pretty clear there that we're talking about the federal portion of our number
Understood.
of federal employees and what that's costing. But those are all, that's not included in our local budget.
Understood.
We
I
provide it for
understand that, sir.
information.
Yeah,
but
I understand that, but that is something that we have to think about, considering the climate that we're in. Yeah.
If we had ARP funded federal employees when I came on board, 30 September, we told them, sorry, he was one of them. You don't have a job anymore, because every one of, even our personnel actions, when we hire someone, it says it's pending the availability. I mean, it's what's the correct word? It's dependent upon the availability of funds. So is your question, Senator, if we're going to absorb these employees into local funding?
Well, I do have concerns. I have concerns about positions that are funded federally that I think we still need, especially when it comes to early childhood education. So the other thing I want to ask you is the unallocable federal payroll funds. What does that do to?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
So in the budget, you have federal payroll funds that are unallocable at $2 million. Can you explain?
Yes, that goes back to right now when we have a federally paid employee, school aid, for example, that's funded by one of the grants. If a principal needs to redirect that employee to do local work that's not in the scope of the grant, that hourly bill becomes our bill. And so right now we're taking funds out of our normal payroll for all the other employees to pay those bills. And the longer we don't have like locally CBA required school aids, the more we're going to continue to pay those bills. I don't know if that answers your question clearly, Senator. That $2 million is to address this problem where we have not presented it before the legislature before, that we are paying hourly wages for any federal employee we put on a local task. And it's not like we assign them permanently on a local task. It's when a school principal is missing school aid that he normally relies on to, for example, watch the gate entering the school, then he has to take a federally funded one and put that individual there. And then we absorb that cost.
Okay. So on the brighter side, so looking for revenues, right? Obviously, the general fund is how we fund Department of Education in addition to any grants. What is the status of the consolidated grant application, and how much is GDOE seeking with that?
We submit a projection, and that submission has gone into the Department of Education. They have received it. They've asked a couple of clarifying questions. We provided that input back to them at the end of last week. We should know by the middle of June what the grant is. They said to anticipate the same level of funding that we had in the last fiscal year, so that would be approximately $35 million in consolidated grant. And there are, I believe, 10 different projects that are operated under that grant.
So what is the gamut does it cover? What does it cover?
It covers our after-school programs. It covers, the whole list of things.
I have a little bit more knowledge about this because I used to be, when I was an ARP employee, I was within the Curriculum and Instruction Office. So they have, of course, like you said, multiple projects. We have the Life Readiness Project, which covers, all these different, between college and career tasks, or not tasks, sorry, not classroom, sorry, college and career preparation. They cover different special activities from Academic Challenge Bowl to not mock trial, it's called the National Forensic League, so the speech and debate. It expands to, they have certain portions of it that pay for sports activities. That's Project 1. They have Project 2, which I believe, I may get the number wrong, but it's curricular supports and interventions. This project, of course, pays for Aspire, Escuela Mpuengi. It pays for, I believe, a portion of summer school as well. They, as the name suggests, they do interventions. The next project is, what is IA? Assessments. I know they cover assessments. That one, of course, helps pay for Ames Web. It helps pay for portions of the SBAC, the Smarter Balanced, that we're now using. There's the Chamorro Studies Special Projects Division that has a portion of the consolidated grant. That portion of the grant, I believe, and again, I would have to go back to verify make sure it's 100% accurate. I believe that portion helps fund supplies and materials and some contracts. So I know that they are currently working on procuring smart boards and whatnot for the immersion program and all of these different things. Then we move on to, it's called the School Climate and Cultural Engagement. Sorry, I'm getting it mixed up with ESCL, which is the division. They're the project that handles a lot of the social workers. They work closely with the nurses program where they kind of co-fund some supplies for them. Let's see, what else do we have? Yes, some of the I'm not sure if it's the SROs or if it's the school aides. We have, they're preparing to hire some more school aides under that project. They're also funding radio equipment, so those handheld radios that the schools will be using. I know that they're procuring a big procurement for those. Generally, that's it. I believe that's the majority of the projects. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 3 under CNI, Chamorro Studies, and then the one under ESCL. And then, of course, outside of that, the CG grant also partially funds activities outside of GDO as well. So private schools, charter schools, dependent on their specific schools, they would have to submit an application, but they would also be partially funded under that. So I apologize if Joe Sanchez was here, right? We would have him run the whole gamut of all the activities. This is just based off of my recollection of what the different activities at CNI were when I was there.
All right, thank you so much. The other thing is the decision about consolidation and potential savings. You know, with the possibility of revenue generation, I know this was brought up at one of the board meetings, to rent out the schools, and just, you know, thinking outside the box in regards to how do we kind of close the gap at this particular time. And so there was one thing that was mentioned yesterday at the apprenticeship workshop yesterday, that the president actually signed an EO looking towards more apprenticeships. And I know this is a discussion I had with the superintendent regards to, he's in support, and in fact this is in line with the school plan to increase I guess apprenticeships within the schools, or at least pre-apprenticeships, 50% within 3 years and 80% within 5 years. And I believe this plan was put out in 2024 or so, or 3 perhaps. So, you know, what is are you aware of this, first of all? And what is, I mean, unfortunately, Deputy Superintendent Sanchez is not here to address this, but I guess what is the status of that?
We are still looking for ways to approach our school-to-work programs, and working closely with Dr. Okada and GCC and the programs that we have in all of our high schools. The apprenticeships get to be a little bit more challenging because we deal with the age of the individual involved and federal labor law, and that's something that we haven't been able to defeat yet, because when you put someone in an industrial environment and they're under 18, there's a real situation with workman's compensation, and that's something that we have to resolve. That's one of the major hurdles, but it's still something that I'd like to see happen.
Yeah, you already have a model that exists, the GCC model, where pretty much where they have satellite programs. So it's a pre-apprenticeship that potentially can lead to apprenticeship positions after graduation. So I think that's my comments and questions for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the panel.
Ms. Masi, Senator Perez. On the follow-up, Chairman Bora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no follow-up. Thank you, GDOE, for coming today.
On the follow-up, Senator Burnett.
Dispensa, Mr. Chair, Sidos Masi. I just kind of wanted to ask about because I don't think we've had you discuss it on the record relative to the $27 million in federal funds that was lost by the department due to a combination of factors, to include grant expirations. So could you just kind of speak to that for the people watching, and to include the $8.8 million that was lost for special education one-to-one aids?
In all of the grants that were involved in that FY22, oddly enough, a year and a half before I got here. However, we have got the ability to reopen all those grants and refile, and we are pursuing that right now. I don't know that we can recover all the funds, but we can recover the majority of it. This is the Special Education Fund. One of the categories we were advised to not reopen by OSEP, which is the Office of Special Education with USED, but rather to reapply those expenses to the newer part of the grant and still recover those funds. So we're working through all of them to be sure that we can get back as much as possible. I don't know exactly yet how much will be recovered because we're in the midst of that work right now.
Thank you. What is the balance or
Senator, if I could just add to that, we just got word last week that our SPED 19 and 21 grant, they're going to allow us to reopen it and draw against it, but they're going to give us a 2-day window. So I have a team together ensuring that Federal Programs is talking with business office, make sure we have the documents right. IAO is going to review everything before we say, okay, we're going to open on this date, or before we inform when we're going to open. So IAO will review our internal audit, will review our documents, and then we'll let USAID know, okay, here's the time period, and we have up till August to do that.
And so you're anticipating, if that goes through, recovering the 8.8 million for special education 1-to-1
Yeah, partial. We're still gathering up all the documents to see what we can legitimately charge against it still. What's available.
So based on the email that we received from SPED, so they received it on their side and shared it with us, this is only opening up for drawdown. So this is not necessarily saying, hey, all of your old POs that you had sitting, go ahead and start requesting for them to deliver and then invoice us. It's only for the expenditures that were already obligated and they need to be just paid down, essentially. So that's what he's referring to with where we need to work with SPED to say, make absolutely sure where are these invoices, or if it's not an invoice, if it's employee payroll, where are these documents? So that way we have it ready on hand when IAO submits the request to USAID. Because like he said, it's only for 1 to 2 days, and it's only just to open it so they can conduct the draw request. And then anything outside of that, it would not be allowable. So we're working to see how much of that 8 million is actually something that we can be allowed to draw down on.
Thank you. Is there a balance, consolidated grants, FY23-24? I was told there was 40 million, over 40 million. And is that in jeopardy of being lost?
We're looking at the report.
Okay.
Senator, you said 23 and 24 consolidated grant?
Yes, sir.
Did you say you were told that those were lost?
I'm asking.
No.
No, I said
those grants are still open.
Okay. So
Yeah.
no, the question was,
22 is the one where we had about a $9 million loss. Not loss. I mean, we're trying to get 22, just like with the SPED. We've requested through USAID to reopen CG 22 so we can draw on those.
Right. Let me just restate the question I had asked was there a balance for the consolidated grant for fiscal year 23-24, and is that balance in jeopardy of being lost?
You're correct with the amount, but we have up until September of this year to obligate funds against those, obligate contracts against those grants, and then we'll have a liquidation period after that. And I'm trying to put together a team, again, with federal programs where we're now meeting weekly with business office, procurement, and we're tracking specific contracts, invoices, whatever comes in, and then we're briefing the superintendent on a monthly basis and the board on a monthly basis.
Forgive me.
On the details of those grants.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
not just the available balance.
So forgive me if you answered this already, but does this budget request include the vendors who were owed, the 94 vendors who were owed under ARP?
No, sir, because that's all on the federal side. This budget request is strictly GDOE's local requirements. Locally funded requirements.
Can you explain if any vendors who were listed under the federal side with ARP have been moved to the local side at all? Because I'd heard in the press briefing that media had asked about that.
No, I think there was confusion in that press briefing that one of our vendors showed up on the federal side and then ultimately moved to local. But that was two different procurements. One was federally paid and one was locally paid.
Okay.
So that wasn't the same procurement. It was the same vendor, but it was two different procurements.
Thank you for that clarification. So, you know, the last few weeks have been very, I think, confusing for a lot of us because we had initially heard from US DOE that in order to access ARP funds, we had to use local funds, and then there'd be a reimbursement. And then subsequently, March 28th, they came out with the letter that said, hey, if you haven't liquidated these funds, the deadline to do that is today. And I know that the chair had previously called for a couple, one emergency session, and then there was discussion that Senator Manzanani brought up about a possible emergency board meeting this week. There was talk about the board declaring an emergency so that the chair in education could ask for an emergency session. However, I heard all that is now on pause. So could you just speak to the people of Guam and explain why that is and what happened to all of the emergency declarations and the emergency sessions that were being discussed by the chair of the board and chair of the committee as well? What changed?
I'll give you my knowledge of the situation. And first of all, the discussion we've had with our committee chair and with other members of the legislature was, in order for them to be able to react to the situation with ARP funding, we had to have an emergency declaration from the board first to do that. But we're in the midst of working through some of these situations where we may not have to do what the committee was thinking we'd have to do with local appropriation. So at this point, we need to work that process through because it's going to depend on whether or not the money is actually released and given back to us.
Which money, Superintendent?
That's the ARP funding.
Okay.
And that amounts to a total of nearly $180 million. If that's released back to us, then what we need from this legislature is to be able to set up that revolving fund and then just to be able to cycle through and pay the bills and be reimbursed. So that's much different than needing to figure out how to liquidate all of the assets involved. So the need is changing, and this is part of the fluidity or mercurialness of whatever is going to come out of the U.S. Department of Education today.
Tread lightly, you don't want to anger my Republican colleagues.
One thing I know I cannot count on, and it's consistency.
So can you speak to the status of the $51 million that you guys have previously mentioned?
It's been submitted, and we've requested that it be paid because it's reimbursement for local payroll costs that were executed well within the midst of that period of liquidation. So we've gone back again. We're waiting to hear on that. A little tough to check email today because our internet was gone, but as of this morning, there was no response yet from USED. But they gave us a couple predictions about when they would put out the list of entities, which is states, state boards of education, territories, and large school systems that have filed the same kind of things that we have. We're hoping to be on that list when the first one comes out so we can turn this all back on and finish the job.
So I know that you issued a 45-day stop work order to Cortec and then the other vendor, I think Northern Construction, possibly more vendors, but I also understand that you met with Mr. Ho, the president of Cortec. Can you share with us the substance of those discussions?
I don't know that I can share that yet, except that we've figured out a way forward that works for Cortec and does not put us in a position of liability, but I still have to.
Was there an agreement with Mr. Ho made that interest would not be charged?
He could always charge interest.
Right.
I mean, that's in the law.
I mean, that's business, but did he commit to the Department of Education?
I'm not going to speak for him.
Okay. Well, you can speak for yourself if you attended the meeting.
I can speak for myself that I feel good about the potential, but this involves a lot of other moving parts that I don't have control over and I don't have the authority to speak for, and I won't.
Okay. Well, I would just offer that maybe that meeting should have been held before you issued the stop work order.
I think it's a very strong way to go, and we'll be fine. It took everybody's stress level down a couple of notches.
Right. Okay. I think that's it. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you, Superintendent Swanson, and thank you, Deputy Superintendent Paul, Mr. Chair, Sidus Masi, and Sidus Masi, Chairman Duenas.
Sidus Masi as well, Senator Burnett. And my understanding is the crux of that, and which is going to be a benefit to us if it works out, is we could save $5 million basic mobilization costs if we can work through some of these things. And that's why I've been saying openly today, we've had chairman's probably had 6 or 8 meetings in the last 10 days with the board and with the superintendent and with the fiscal team just to see that we can do everything that we can. It's a huge savings if we can get some agreements in place to discontinue the demobilization. That's a lot of money, $5 million. Vice Speaker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to bring back on my colleagues, the 22 million, the 2022 on the 9 million. When did the contract end with the third-party fiduciary?
October 31st of 23.
Of when?
Of 2023.
Of 2023?
Correct.
And what was their purpose for being in Department of Education?
Their purpose was to monitor fiscal operations.
Of federal funds?
Yes, federal funds, U.S. Department of Ed funding.
So how did they not catch a 2022 of $9 million that it was expiring, that we'd be losing it?
Consolidated grant periods run in overlapping years, which is part of the piece that I still find a little bit difficult to understand. It is not fiscal year to fiscal year.
I understand
grants, but why is it a problem with what they were overseeing? I could not tell you. I never worked with them because they were on their way out when I came in.
So who within the department worked with the third party?
His predecessor.
It was the people before me.
People before you.
I came in July of 24.
I see. Okay.
I would certainly offer that there are procedural things that were not being done well. I mean, I know this secondhand because I wasn't involved in the transition meetings either. So I don't know the way the model was set up. But the documentation that was left to us from the third party was in a form that we could not get to all of the documents that we needed to be able to edit and understand and even audit. And we still have some difficulty with that, and Wade has been wrestling with that for some time because rather than giving us a live data transfer where we could just pull it into our system, they just shut it off. Then we had to go back and appeal it, and everything came back to us in PDF forms. So it's might as well like having a stack of papers. We couldn't go in and look at data and analyze it. So that really complicated the process of settling it. But in terms of the liquidation period, part of the problem was our own folks not following the SOPs that have been established. We are well into the process of revising those and retraining people so we don't have this again.
Okay. That's great to hear, and that's why I just wanted to get a little clarification as to where we were and where we're at today, and how did we remedy some of those actions that were not taken, and now that.
And a big part of it is cleaning up what is no longer the role of the third party because it's not here, and what is and is not the role of everybody in the workflow.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Thank you very much for that question and that answer, because I think that should actually clear up some of the questions that folks have about what we lost and how we got there and how did we lose it. So, sometimes, we raise our hand and we take the blame for it, but when the blame doesn't directly go to us, we need to show where the blame needs to go. We say, well, so let's stop blaming, but when we're talking millions of dollars, someone has to be held accountable. So I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just buzzing, Mr. Vice Speaker, Vice Chair. Senator Talataguian, follow-ups?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just really short. Again, I please stress that you provide us a revised budget because it's important for all of us. If we're going to defend your budget on the session floor when it comes time, we got to know what we're talking about. We got to know where the money is going. And if it gets too confusing, you know, people are just going to give up and say, no, just give them this amount and let it go. Let them work it out. So it's important to provide that. The Aspire grant that I talked about earlier, you said that you haven't received anything from the federal government. We know it's a consolidated grant, but it doesn't mean that it could be taken away. I just want to know how many children would be affected if that Aspire grant is no longer available and you don't have any way to subsidize it.
Are you asking if the consolidated grant were to go away?
Well, I'm talking about the Aspire grant because we know it's a consolidated grant, right? But if it is in a consolidated grant that is jeopardized, then it subtracts the Aspire grant. I'm just talking about the Aspire grant, the part that takes care of the after-school program. How many students would be affected?
That's be difficult to give you without really running a check to see what's going on in each school, but each elementary school has an Aspire program.
Right.
There are related programs in the middle school for academic support. So it would certainly have impact across all of the elementary and middle schools.
Exactly. I think probably in the thousands. We're talking about affecting thousands of families and students with this particular grant. So when you're doing your revised budget, please incorporate, this, how much it would cost and what it would affect, especially this particular grant program, which is very, very helpful for so many families across. And I can already see if this ends and there is no subsidies for this one, we're going to get phone calls. Every senator is going to get, hundreds of phone calls because of this. So just let us know that cost on this one. That's just a little, I know there's other grants that are very important, but this one I think is going to really impact the schools if this is no longer funded. So I thank you so much. Just coming in front of us, you got a lot of courage right now. I know you're holding it all in, but please do your very best, and looking forward to that revised budget. Thank you.
Senator Tadigui. So I just have a couple comments as we close, just to go back to earlier in the day in our discussion with charter schools. The charter schools are coming to us asking us to increase their budget because their door is getting, knocked down basically with requests from parents to send their children, to the schools. That's what we're grappling with. And I made it clear to them that we will do everything that we can. It's kind of interesting too with the 3,500 plus students that they have. When we now take their budget, if that was still a DOE budget, basically your request would be granted right now. If we add the two numbers together. My point is this: you have a de-escalating, you're losing students, but you have an escalating budget. Now, I'm not going to say that you don't need it. I'm not going to say that you haven't presented something to us that's necessary. But what I'm saying is, at some point running these, and I said this morning, at some point running these parallel education systems, I think is going to require us to revisit where we're at in our process of education, where charter schools are going, where DOE is going. And perhaps there's going to be a discussion of reorganization. I mean, you're already downsizing, you're already, putting campuses basically to a situation where you've anticipated and you have talked about and you have closed some schools up to date. And so the truth is that that's where we're at. And I'm talking about having real conversations with our community. This is going to be having real conversations with our community. The other thing, and I know I've talked to you about this, Mr. Swanson, Superintendent, is it's no secret that the federal government no longer wants to build out Dodea schools. They want to do something different. When it comes to housing, when it comes to schools and structures internally, the cost is astronomical, probably double even what you're providing in terms of per student ratio. And so the truth is they're looking for different models. And it seems logical that if we have schools on the outside that we're closing, and I've talked to the congressman about this, to approach them, that charter schools, want to expand instead of them building new campuses. Why don't we start getting in conversations about those schools that we are planning to close, and then the charters can go in and they can probably come in and work with the charter schools to build out and to have two complementary systems. I was so happy to hear in our pre-budget meetings, and they said it again today with charter schools, there's actually Dodea kids that are going to our charter schools. There are dependents that are teachers that are teaching and want to teach within our charter schools. They're choosing schools outside of Dodea schools. So that already tells you that this model is getting ripe for a conversation. So we're going to talk about your budget. We're going to debate your budget. We're going to deal with it in the totality of what the ceiling is and what we believe we can adopt as a level. And as I assured this morning, the charter schools, we're going to get as close as we possibly can, and whatever we can do. But I think it's important for the board and for others to start having some of these conversations about opportunities outside of what you currently have structurally, and opportunities within the charter school arrangement and the DOE arrangement to see if we can't start to make some progress. There's Marines that are coming in now, probably by June, from what we understand. The overall federal picture, as you know, has been revised. It's somewhere around 34,000 persons upwards. There's going to be families associated with that. There's going to be kids that are going to need schooling. So this is something that we should start talking about now, so that we have a plan going forward and opportunities going forward. And I really think there is a lot of opportunity there. So I just want to end with that, and once again let you know that we're going to work absolutely as hard as we can to get to your numbers. If there is a revised budget, please feel free to send it to the committee. We'll disseminate it. If there's a need for another round, we can call you back. Otherwise, we can debate whatever you bring to us on the floor. And I will give the courtesy, of course, of making sure that it goes to all senators. All senators will have the opportunity before we actually go into session to not only review, but to meet with OFB in terms of what the final picture looks like before we hit the floor. So we'll be fully transparent on what's going on so they know what they can do, if they think they can do it, on the floor in terms of moving money between budget categories. So with that, I want to thank you for coming today and making your presentation. Of course, we'll continue to have conversations with you about all the other issues that are ongoing. I want to thank you for meeting with us consistently on this ever-changing issue with regard to the ARP funds. But, I'm going to make a statement to the people, too, that, along with your statement, that we have a plan. We have a plan in place, and we have contingency funding in order to at least bridge us going forward. And if we need an emergency session, we certainly will call one. Well, we thank you for all the work that you've done internally to find some additional resources, to work to make sure that the contractor can at least stay on as long as possible to avoid loss of additional resources. And, your team has done a really good job in terms of working very closely with us. So I want to appreciate you and the team for that, Mr. Board Chair. Thank you, too, for taking all the meetings that we've asked you to take. With that, housekeeping, this will conclude this afternoon's budget hearing on Bill 44-38 COR relative to the Guam Department of Education. The committee will continue to accept written testimony on the bill within 7 calendar days from today, which may be addressed to myself, Senator Christopher M. Dueñas, as chairman of the committee, and mailed to 163 West Chalan Santa Papa in Magaña. You may also send your testimonies to my email at senator.dueñas@guamlegislature.gov. This afternoon's budget hearing is now adjourned, and the time is 4:54, and we are in recess. It's Masi team.